Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Beesley, Leader of Bournemouth Council. It's just my luck, isn't it, to have to follow Roy Pointer. But I'll do my best. We've had some excellent speeches this afternoon, but the Council's role as a statutory consultee is largely to represent the views of residents, and I was listening very carefully to Mr Pointer, and he made some very, very strong points, didn't he? Can I just take us briefly through the experience of Bournemouth as a statutory consultee, and then I'll look to the future. Because throughout this process over the last 3 years, as you heard me speak when we were at the Royal Bath, probably about 15 or 18 months ago, we have experienced the most frustrating process as we've tried to work with Navigators Bay, and the difficulty in getting any clear information from them on specific items has been compounded week on week, month on month. We have a history of broken promises, broken commitments on the key issues, and trying to work with them jointly on a proper tourism research project, providing actual, accurate visualisations has been absolutely impossible. Remember, we are the statutory consultee representing the residents of Bournemouth, and without that accurate information, we simply can't do the function that's required of us in the planning process. At the same time, we've been working with neighbouring authorities throughout Dorset, headed by Dorset County Council, and indeed a lot of work also with Hampshire County Council, and that work, together with what we've done through Mark Smith, the Director of Tourism, has picked up all of the key issues that are required of us as a statutory consultee, so that we can represent, in planning terms, the arguments that we need to and make sure they're entirely accurate. So for Bournemouth, as a council, this is not about government policy, it's not about whether we agree with the government on climate change, it's not even about whether we believe that this proposal, or indeed any other proposal, offers good value for the taxpayer. That is beyond our remit. It is not what we are there to do as a statutory consultee. We may have strong views on the subject, but we need to concentrate on the areas that we are responsible for. And those come down largely to just a very few key areas. Visual amenity. The scale and the closeness and the height and the noise from this proposal are the areas that we've been trying to gain evidence for, so that we can assess the planning application and determine our views on its planning merits. The planning application has been made, it's been registered by the Planning Inspectorate, and it won't be until we've had time to study it in some considerable detail that we will be making our response known. And our response will be based on evidence. It will be based on the views of residents when they are on planning grounds, and it will be for us to make sure that we are not accused later on of any predetermination on this application. And that is why I and my colleagues have been very careful about everything that we've said in public, because predetermination would be the wrong approach for us to make, and we will do this in a timely way, reflecting the views properly that we're charged with doing. In addition to visual amenity, the next major part of our role is to assess the economic impact. And as we heard from Mark Smith earlier, in terms of tourism alone and the effect it may have on jobs and income, our research has shown that that could be very, very considerable. That is something that probably affects a large number of people in this room, probably a lot of people in your own families, and certainly many of your friends and neighbours. We've got to get that right. We've got to make sure that our information is accurate and that we get those arguments across strongly at the right time. The third area is around the setting of the Jurassic case and indeed the wider implications. We heard from Mr Pointer about why so many people want to live here. It is a beautiful part of the world, and it is on our watch that we are the custodians to ensure that it stays the same for future generations. For me, the natural environment is something that we don't play around with, and if we do so at our peril and for the future. Of course, we're also custodians of our local industries. We're custodians of jobs, we're custodians of people's income, and we're custodians of this beautiful place as Britain's premier resort. We've heard all sorts of comparisons. I don't see any comparison of Bournemouth with Great Yarmouth, or Clapton, or indeed a number of other East Coast resorts. This is a very, very special area. And what bothers me the most is our inability, because we are statutory consultees, to influence the process more than just to the extent that we are allowed to. You've heard of my frustrations in being able to do that, but if we look forward, those frustrations are compounded yet again. This is not a council decision. Oh, that it were. This is a decision which will be made by the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change on the recommendation of the Planning Inspectorate, a body that is quite distant from Bournemouth, a body that will consider the evidence, but that evidence will be very difficult when set against government policy and against the other criteria that they will be bound to look at. And so it is important, as Mr. Pointer said a moment ago, that all of Bournemouth's residents take part in this process, that you give strength to the arm of the council to represent you properly, and that we are influential enough as a result of that, both through the Planning Inspectorate and ultimately to the Secretary of State, whoever he or she is, after the next general election when the final decision will be made. We, on Bournemouth Council, will reflect those views, we'll base them on the evidence that we have collected, we'll base them on planning policy, we'll base them on all the things that the Planning Inspectorate will expect us to do, but be in no doubt, we have alarm over this proposal because of the scale and because of the lack of clear evidence coming forward from the applicants. And we will make sure that whatever we do will be in the best interests of Bournemouth, its residents and its long-term future. Thank you very much.